So yeah, welcome to the webinar today, everybody, on the theme of credit unions and social enterprises. Just building those kind of like links between our different respective sectors, and just really exploring that theme of shared values. So this is something we've been talking about a lot recently in various webinars, is talking about how we connect social enterprises with other parts of the social enterprise world or out with the social enterprise world, and how we can kind of explore the shared values. So we've got three brilliant speakers with us today. So we've got Dermot from the Scottish League of Credit Unions, Karen Wallace from Right Way Credit Union, and Nicol from Moray Firth Credit Union. So Dermot's going to give us a bit of a roundup about the social enterprise sector in Scotland in general, and a bit of background, and then we'll talk about kind of grassroots credit unions and what they're doing in their local communities. So I will pass on to Dermot just now.
Thanks, Duncan. There's always that worry when you're introduced as a brilliant speaker, so thanks for setting that. Three speakers would have sufficed, but three brilliant speakers sets the tone. I guess to first of all set the context of credit unions in Scotland, there are about 85 credit unions in Scotland now, where once there were about 140. Altogether, there's about 370,000 adult members, 44,000 junior members, 725 million in shares, and about 340 million in loans across all of the credit unions in Scotland. And I've been invited today as the Chief Executive of the Scottish League of Credit Unions. We're a trade association that support credit unions. We support about a third of credit unions in Scotland, and our credit unions are typically community-based, volunteer-led credit unions. And our purpose as a trade association is really simple. It's to help our credit unions become and remain compliant, sustainable and cooperative. And we do that by focusing on 6 key pillars of activity: advice, education, networking, facilitation, representation and promotion. It's not our role as a trade association to tell credit unions what they should do. It's our role to help credit unions know how they should do things. And we encourage credit unions to think about the entirety of their firm through 6, I guess, perspectives or key areas. And those areas are strategy, governance, operations, financials, reputation, and compliance. And by thinking about your firm, whether you're a credit union or social enterprise, through that entirety, then it helps the volunteer board of directors have a better handle on how the firm's operating and how it's progressing. And I think it's fair to say that the past couple of years have been challenging, for not just for credit unions, but for social enterprises and indeed for all firms. From a credit union perspective specifically, 2021 was statistically similar to 2020, where there was a general stagnation of membership. That may be because there are priorities elsewhere, dealing with the moment and not the future. But that stagnation of membership generally has also resulted in an increase in shares, which may seem like a positive thing. There's more money coming into credit unions, but unfortunately it's coupled with less money going out of credit unions in terms of loans. So the influx of new money, of new shares, is placing some regulatory challenges on credit unions. And that reduction in lending that credit unions have experienced, and lending is the lifeblood, is the primary income source for credit unions. So not only have we had an increase in extra money, but a decrease in the money being lent out, a general decline in Christmas and holiday loans, and an increase in debt consolidation loans. Now, there are some signs of growth across some credit unions, but the overall sector is experiencing a decrease in lending. With that decrease in lending, we're also experiencing an increase in provisioning. Provisioning is the money that credit unions need to set aside for bad and doubtful debts. So there are more loans falling behind in terms of repayments. And that also translates to an increase in bad debt, more loans being written off. And just for some context, for every single loan that's written off in a credit union, it essentially takes 14 other loans of the same value just to offset a singular loan being written off. So for example, if a credit union needs to write off a £1,000 loan to a member, then it takes the interest earned on 14 other £1,000 loans simply to offset that loss. So bad debt write-offs is a systemic risk for credit unions. And with that increase in provisioning and in that increase in bad debt, it's resulted in a reduction in surplus or profit made by credit unions. And credit unions are sometimes described as not-for-profit, which is a wee bit unhelpful, because credit unions, like every social enterprise, needs to generate profit or surplus to sustain its income, to sustain its life. It's how would that profit is distributed that makes a difference. With an erosion in capital, credit unions are facing some challenging times, and things are about to get worse. The rises in cost of living present a real risk to credit unions. I heard a phrase recently that was, for some people, there's too much month left at the end of the money. And that notion is a dilemma for credit unions, where people need to access affordable credit. Credit unions need to be able to establish the affordability of the members. But those challenging times are not just limited to credit unions, they apply to all social enterprises. And as credit unions, some credit unions will tread water over the next years or so. Some credit unions will unfortunately not sustain this treading of water and will fail. But some credit unions will thrive. And the credit unions that will thrive are those that will have a deliberate direction of travel. And there's 5 key elements that we see attributed to that deliberate direction of travel. Number 1 is effective promotion or marketing. Credit unions, and indeed social enterprises, effectively promoting to the right people at the right times, for the right reasons, in the right places. Credit unions have in the past existed by momentum. We've churned money, and the churning of money has generated a life cycle in credit unions. But as the availability of credit increases, it's important that credit unions think about who they're lending money to now, not in the past, and who might they be lending money to in the future, at the same time as promoting responsible lending and encouraging the habit of saving. So effective promotion is the first key variable. The second key variable is around widening access. It's about physical but also virtual touch points, as well as not instead of. It's about encouraging credit unions and indeed social enterprises to continue to develop their digital ecosystems to make sure that those that want to engage physically through an office or a premises can, but also more importantly that credit unions remain open, virtually open, to the new and next generation of members who may choose not to engage in the traditional visit an office environment, but instead would prefer to engage through digital touchpoints, mobile phones, etc. So widening access is the second key variable. Third key variable is ensuring continued relevance, making sure that the business model, whether that's very localised savings and loans, or whether it's a full remote servicing, but making sure that that business model remains aligned to the needs of the members. One of our credit unions last year in relation to COVID and the pandemic said that in the past, credit unions were there to help people on a rainy day. And they said, well, now it's pouring. And I think it's a really important question for credit unions to wrestle with. What's their purpose in the lives of their members? Where credit unions were once for holidays and for Christmas, those borrowing needs have reduced and are diminishing in generality. So it's important that credit unions continue to look at their relevance in terms of what they do and for whom and when and how. That's the third key variable. The fourth key variable is having a mindset of risk, being aware of the risks that the business face, accurately assessing how those risks might impact the credit union. How do you mitigate? How do you monitor? How do you adapt? And how do you manage the business through a risk management mindset that might not have been necessary in a pre-COVID landscape? How many credit unions and indeed social enterprises can turn off autopilot and really leverage the levers available to change the fortunes of your firm? And the final and ultimately, I would argue, most important variable for credit unions that want to have a clear direction of travel is having capable and competent personnel. It's how the firm is governed, and it's all about the people. Who does the credit union need now? Not in the past, not the founder members, not pre-COVID, but in a post-COVID landscape. What type of people do credit union need? What are the skills and competencies? And indeed, what are the personalities? How do you get that right blend of people to ensure that the credit unions continue to thrive? What do people need to know and do? How do credit unions manage management information, minimum expectations? How are credit unions or indeed social enterprises trending their business? How are they understanding how the businesses perform? And that notion of how is the credit union governed? Is it like it once was, having bums on seats, or is it devices in hand? Is it the old versus the new? What is the right governance framework now, not then? It's okay to look back, just don't stare. And then I guess lastly on the governance element is, when does that change need to happen? Was it yesterday? Is it today? Is it tomorrow? How long can credit unions or social enterprises continue as they are, but still remain relevant? And I guess finally, from our perspective, it would be about encouraging our credit unions to be very clear on their purpose. What is their purpose, or what isn't their purpose? Why does a credit union exist? Not then, not why was it started at some point in the past, but why does it exist now in the space that is affordable credit? When there are many options available for people to access affordable credit, what makes each individual credit union relevant? What does the credit union do? It's not necessarily that savings and loans are an outdated business model. It's about how credit unions do it now. How do credit unions change the lives of their members today and going forward?
That's great. Thanks, Dermot. A lot to think about there, certainly. So hopefully some questions are going to come up as well. So anybody who's here, please do post your questions in the chat anytime. And I'll now hand over to Karen Wallace.
Hi, thanks for that. Following on for Dermot, it's always a bit nerve-wracking. It said we should be doing this, we should be doing that, and it's all really good stuff. But one of the things that Dermot had mentioned there in the end is what is the purpose of a credit union? And the purpose for us at Right Way Credit Union is the same as it was when we started years ago, and it was to support our local community to become more financially resilient and improve their financial well-being. And like Dermot had said there, it's never been more important than it is today to do that. And coming off the back of COVID as well, it's how do we do that? It can be really challenging. The way that we used to work was members would come into our branch and speak to us face to face, and we've had to adapt really quickly into a more digital world. So first of all, Right Way Credit Union, we started in the area of Renfrewshire, and we were a Renfrewshire Wide Credit Union. We widened our common bond in 2019, and we changed our name to Right Way Credit Union. So we currently have around 5,000 members. We have around 3 million out in loan and 4.5 million in savings. So COVID impacted us the same way that Dermot had mentioned earlier around, we've seen a real drop in borrowing and a real increase in provision for bad debt. And so for us, we've always been a really proactive credit union, and we made the decision to do things a little bit different rather than closing down. We were going to really open up when the world opened up, and we launched a huge marketing campaign, which was huge for us because we're a medium-sized credit union. That was fantastic. It was really successful for us, and now we worry about how do we get the money paid back in. Now that we've lent the money out, we're like, we're now in a cost of living crisis. How do we deal with that? But for us at Right Way, it's always been about looking at the problems that we face and seeing how we can work our way out of that. So we do, one of the other visions for us and a key goal for us is always to be really active in our local community. So in order to do that, we take part and work closely with other social enterprises. So in our area, the third sector interface Engage, we do a lot of activities with them around money talks, educating people on what credit unions are, how they can support them. We attend the University of the West of Scotland Freshers Fair every year to educate students and let them know that the credit union's here for them. We have recently started working with the West of College Scotland as well, and we are hosting an awareness day with them next Wednesday on the 27th. So if you're in the area of Paisley and at the college, please do drop by and say hello. We'll be there from 11 AM till 2 PM. Talking on the cost of living and the increase in everything, really, increase in everything. Everything costs a fortune. But one of the things that was really making the headlines was the increase in fuel, gas, electricity, that kind of thing recently. So what we looked to do was host our first ever podcast with Home Energy Scotland, which we launched, which I think we'd issued a couple of weeks ago. I'll drop the link to the podcast in the chat after I'm off. So if anybody hasn't already listened to it, there's some fantastic tips in there. I listened to it after it had been recorded and I got some really great tips as well. So this is the kind of thing that we are doing as a social enterprise, to work with other organisations to educate our members on how they can save money, budget, you know, borrow. And it's not always just about the credit union, but our partners and how our partners can support our members as well. And last, one of the things that we're working on at the moment is to promote our payroll savings programme, which we've called Money Works at Right Way Credit Union. So I'd like to share a short video with you on that, if that's okay. But what we're looking to do is to work with other businesses and social enterprises to encourage people to save through their salary. Small regular savings really does create a safety net for those times, and we know it's extremely difficult for people to save at the moment, but even, you know, £2, £3, £5 a week, a month can really create a safety net for people. So I am going to share that video just now. I hope it works. We always test these things and then we're like, oh, is it going to work? And if you get any questions for me at the end of this, I'm happy to either chat in the chat box. I'll put my contact details up. You can contact me directly or contact me through the Scottish League.
A happy workforce leads to a productive workplace. But when money worries affect your employees, it's not just your business that suffers. By investing in your staff, you are investing in your business. That's where Money Works at Right Way comes in. We can help your staff improve their financial well-being through access to seamless savings and affordable credit, offering a frictionless process for you and your staff. We're an ethical alternative to high street and high interest lenders, allowing your employees to save money directly from their salary, making savings much easier and making your business perform better. Money worries cost the UK economy £120 billion last year and 17.5 million lost hours of work. So by improving financial security with better habits, you'll be helping your employees fulfil their financial goals, so they can help your business thrive.
Money Works at Right Way. Let's get started.
So thanks for listening to that. And one of the other things that we're doing recently as well, we've only just started today, is to get our staff into training with Money and Pension Service Scheme. They're doing a Money Guiders training programme. So it's, we felt, to be reactive to what's happening at the moment, it was really important to upskill our staff as well. So that's just another example of how we are working with other agencies to support our local communities. So there's lots of activity going on here at Right Way Credit Union, and you know, the job's never ending, isn't it? But it always comes back to how can we best support our community, and how can we promote financial well-being and resilience today. So that's it from me. Thank you.
That's great. Thanks, Karen. That's really, really good. I'll just hand over to Jackie just now.
Hi, I'm Jackie Nicol, and I'm from the Moray Firth Credit Union up in North Scotland. We're on the Morayshire coast. We were formerly known as Forest Area Credit Union. We started back in 1995 in a small room in the local community centre, and that was after the closure of a fabrication yard in Ardseer, and it caused high unemployment in the area. We were actually the second highest in Scotland. So that's how it all started from there, to try and help the local community that way. We've built ourselves up since then. It's been a hard slog to moving into the high street in 2005, and then we bought the building that we're in just now in 2017, just as our membership grew and more demand was needed. So but we are run mainly by volunteers. We do have 4 part-time staff, but we're paid by applying for grants and funding and stuff like that. So that's the only way that we can manage paid staff, and that's been a pretty hard slog, let me tell you. We were recently paid by Highlands and Islands Enterprise. They paid the wages for a year, and we're not sure if they're going to continue. So that's one of the main things that we do here. But certainly, during the pandemic, we stayed open all the time. I just joined the company in 2020. So we were here for our members, to be able to come in and get access to their funds. But during that time, we realised that we needed to become a bit more virtual, because people didn't want to come outside and especially come into offices. So we introduced the card payment, CardNet, so that folk could phone us and pay into their accounts, pay their loans, etc., via their cards. We also set up Equifax, because that helped us, in our decision making for lending to our members, because we've had some big write-offs the year, like in 2019, and because we're such a small credit union, that had a huge impact on us. We did eventually, we got a subordinated loan to try and keep us afloat, which we managed to pay back when we got our Scottish government money. That kind of kept us floating as well, as it were. So we have set up 2 satellite points. Our common bond, we're Moray and Nairn. So we've set up 2 satellite points, one in Elgin and one in Buckie. So they're just for 2 hours a week each, run by volunteers. But yet again, it's trying to recruit volunteers. It's proven difficult because it's costing our volunteers, it's costing us money to send our volunteers out there. They're slow burners, but we are starting to get more members, and more loans out of that. One of the best things that we did, though, was launching our new website in 2021, and we're advertising on social media now. So that really helped us kind of promote ourselves more. We launched a 30-second video on what our lending is, what we can do to help people lend that way, because what we found here, being in a small community, the provident were going to the doors and people were, lending that, borrowing that way, and that was actually horrendous the amount of interest that we're paying back. So we kind of try and focus on that, that our lending is very competitive, rather than, along with the other banks that we have. And in July, we won't have any banks at all in the town. So we're now, trying to promote ourselves that way, in that we can help people, that especially the post office accounts, they're closing down as well if they get their benefits paid in. So that's been another big thing for us to try and advertise, what we can do to help, our members, and reaching out to the wider public as well. So, but as I say, with us being a bit more virtual now, and our online, our social media, that has increased our membership. So we've got about 1,500 members here. Our lending book is about just under 300,000, and we've got about just over $1 million in savings. So we have got a lot of money that we can lend out, and that's what we're trying to get across to our community here. We've managed to get a bit of funding to start a trainee for a year on 25 hours a week, and that's through the Moray Employability Recruitment Initiative. So that trainee will come on board and try and learn everything about credit union, and also to help promote it. And we've been fortunate enough to get a wee bit of money from the Community Health and Wellbeing. So we've got one of our volunteers has now become like an employee for 10 hours a week. And that's going to be to help people that are in vulnerable positions, you know, so it's help with budgeting, managing money, you know, that sort of thing. Just like Karen said, you know, folk are panicking now about, you know, the cost of living because it is getting so expensive. So we've managed to get somebody on board that'll help, you know, people budget their money. We became a bit of a mini social work department during the pandemic as well. So we were handing out food vouchers, actual food, clothing, you know, just whatever was needed. So we were working closely with the FACT, which is the Forest Area Community Trust. So they're right next door to us. So they would like put food in here for us so that we would open for people to come and pick up things. You know, the food bank, etc. So that's where we're wanting to try and build a bigger relationship there, you know, and the different things that we're doing. The Moray Mobile Food Pantry as well, that's something that was just launched here quite recently, where they're going out to remote areas with food. And that was to do with people being a bit, you know, a bit worried about going into food banks. They actually pay £2.50 and can get 10 items. So we're working alongside them in that they're going to promote the credit union into the rural community. So hopefully we'll be able to help people that kind of get into town using virtual, etc. And also they're going to be taking deposits for us eventually. So that's just something that we're just starting with just now. Also the Co-op have been in touch with us. They're wanting to start having our leaflets and information on their counters. So that's just something that's in the very early stages of, you know, promoting the credit union in that way to help people. So, and actually, workplace savings, that's another thing that we're doing just now. So I'm a bit nervous, so do apologise. We've had a local company get in touch with us the other day that have got 20 employees that are really keen, and that's something that we've been trying to do for the last year. We've done leaflets. We want to go down and speak to people to try and encourage people to save and to borrow at the same time, because, you know, the feedback that we do get when people's loans have finished is that they didn't realise that they've got a wee pot of savings there, you know, that they wouldn't have had otherwise. So, so yeah, that's something that we're kind of getting on board with as well. So we do have a video as well, and I wasn't clever enough to get that ready. So, but if you go onto our website, murrayfirthcreditunion.co.uk, or onto our Facebook site, that you can actually get the video there, and it's just a short 30-second video that explains what we're doing for lending. And I think that's all for me, so thank you for listening.
That's great, thanks Jackie. Really, really good roundup there. So I think we've got three really, really interesting perspectives there. Lots of information to digest. I've got like a big page of notes here of potential questions, so there's plenty to talk about, I think. Yeah, as I mentioned, do post your questions and comments in the chat at any time. We haven't got any at the moment, but just feel free as an attendee just to post anything in there as we go forward. Yeah, I just wanted to come back to the issue, I suppose, of the cost of living crisis. I mean, obviously, you've all mentioned this, and it's something it's certainly come up for our members recently, and we're going to be holding a webinar actually the end of May on kind of energy costs specifically and the kind of cost of doing business, which I think is really, really important. So we're definitely involved in that conversation. But do any of you want to say a bit more on that, just the cost of living crisis and maybe, I suppose, opportunities for credit unions and also the challenges involved with that?
Duncan, I'm happy to at least start that conversation. I think that's one of the things that makes credit unions interesting, is that there's no standard approach to being a credit union. It's up to each credit union to determine what the needs are of their specific membership. So the needs of one localised membership may be a world apart from another credit union's localised membership. And that's what makes credit unions relevant, that they're responsive to the needs. And it's up to each credit union to determine how intrinsic or not is the credit union in a member's life. So we will have people just now that have very acute credit needs, and it's up to the credit union to determine whether the credit union is the best, whether extending credit to that person is the right thing for that person. And then what's the basis of extending that credit? And it's not always the right thing. So going back to that notion of, for some people, there's too much months left at the end of the money. It may not be the best thing to extend further credit to that person. It may be, but it's having a conversation with the member to understand, what does your expenditure look like? Can the ability to increase the income is fairly redundant from a credit union perspective, but the ability to reduce expenditure is something the credit union can work with members to say, is there something we can do here to consolidate some of these credit commitments? What are the credit commitments? Who are the to? What are the for? What are the values? And is there something that can be done in that space? So I think it's a very individualized conversation relative to each credit union. And I think what we've got today is two examples of Right Way and Moray Firth. And I think that the phrase that Jackie used was a mini social work department. That is a very niche relationship with a group of members relative to Moray Firth Credit Union. That wouldn't necessarily be the same relationship that other credit unions have. But again, that's what makes credit unions interesting. It's being responsive to the needs of your membership, being understanding how you as a credit union can serve the people that you serve. And I note from the participants, there are other credit unions in attendance, and each credit union will have their own take on how much the credit union can do for their members or not. So some of the more traditional phrases would be, if you can't afford to save, you can't afford to borrow. That was a traditional mantra that some credit unions used. Nowadays, some credit unions say there's no relationship between saving and borrowing. It's two separate things. If you need to access affordable credit, then here is our proposition to extend credit to you. And at the same time, if we can encourage you to save, then great, but it's almost two separate strands. Does that make sense, Duncan?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. And Jackie or Karen, do you want to pick up on any of those points at all?
Yeah, I mean, you know, we are, you know, like a small local community credit union, and I mean, even some of the people that we were helping out, you know, during the pandemic and even recently, they're not actual members. So they've come into us in the hope to open an account and get us to help them pay gas bills, etc. But because we don't do direct debits to pay their other household bills, it's not something we could help. But certainly we ended up, you know, getting them help with phoning REAP, which is you know, somebody that can, it's a department who can help them get some access to money to help pay a gas bill. I mean, we had one lady in particular who, she had no gas, she lives out in a caravan, and until she paid a certain amount of money, they wouldn't give her any fuel to heat her premises. So we managed to phone through and go through a whole application with them to try and get her access to funds, and she ended up getting funds. So she wasn't actually a member, but we still helped her because she was a member of our community. And, you know, and with that, spreading the word that, yeah, we're not just here to, you know, save or whatever, we could actually help them out with other things. So we've actually helped quite a lot of people in directing them into, you know, other areas where they can get financial help or advice. And that's why, you know, it's the you know, our new person that we've taken on for the 10 hours a week. That's part of what we're going to do here as well, because we're getting a bit of a refurbishment done. So we've got a big building and we're going to be sectioning it off, new offices, like a new office, etc., so that people can come in. You know, even things like filling out forums, I mean, that can be a huge thing for people. So we want people to feel comfortable that they can come in and get some, you know, some help and where to go to, or to, you know, budget advice, that sorts of things. So yeah, we're just kind of spreading ourselves more and getting the word out there.
I think that's a really important point as well, that, you know, in terms of credit unions and other social enterprises, they help people in the local community regardless of their remit in a way. It's just like they're, you know, they reach out, they're part of the local community, and I think that's a real strength of credit unions. Karen, do you want to pick up on any of those points as well?
Yeah, so two things. First, following on from what Jackie was saying about helping people in our community, and that's always been what our goal and our vision has been at Right Way Credit Union. But over the past 5 years, our experience, and I imagine lots of people, credit unions are the same, that how we help people has drastically changed. We still do savings and we still do loans, but the way we do it has changed, and we've had to adapt really quickly to a more online and digital environment in a short space of time. And so credit unions have had to be so proactive in the past couple of years just to be able to cope with, to sustain the credit union. But on the back of that as well, we're now thrown into the cost of living crisis. So we've had to invest in the things like Jackie said around being more digitally available. So that could be like bringing in card payments or mobile apps, upgrading your website, all these type of things, which costs us money. While our members are scared to borrow and then on top of that, we've got the cost of living crisis because everything else has gone up. So it is like the perfect storm that you know Dermot was mentioning earlier on around. It's a really challenging time for credit unions. But one of the things that we are doing is, like I'd mentioned before, we are working with Money and Pension Services to educate our staff on things that we can pass on to our members. And one of the things that you know that that's been spoken out before is there's actually £16 billion of unclaimed benefits that people are not getting access to. So if we could point our members in the right direction where they could access that, or even when they're filling in their application forms for lending, to see if we educate our staff to go, actually this person potentially could be, you know, entitled to some more benefits, and then send them to someone to help them fill in the form, or a formal referral, then that's another way that we can help our members. But I also the second point I wanted to pick up on was the comment that John at West Lothian Credit Union had made. And yes, I'm just going back to see, yeah, we on the back of the pandemic, we were all in lockdown, we did see a huge decrease in borrowing from our members and an increase in savings like every credit union did. And we sat down with our board and said we need to do something, you know, different that we've never done before, because if we keep doing what we've always done, we'll always get what we always got. So credit unions, in my experience, have never been the best at doing marketing because we just don't have the budget for it. The money just isn't there, especially when we're having to invest in things like websites and cardnet things and all of these other digital things just to sustain our business. But our board at Right Way did allow me a budget to do something a bit different, and that's where we developed our TV campaign. So John, that's what worked for us, was a TV campaign, and we got in contact with STV, who also run a growth fund, so they will put some funding into what you put up as well. So there was some other financial support there, packages, so that might be something worth looking into. I've also been a great advocate of credit unions working together as well, and I can see there's a few credit unions in attendance here. And in Ireland, they did a joint credit union campaign, which I've followed them. I thought it was fantastic. And I think, you know, if credit unions, smaller credit unions can't afford to do a TV marketing campaign, then maybe that's something we could do as, you know, a cooperative together, more around the benefits of credit union rather than a specific brand of one credit union. So there's definitely scope for that. John, that did increase our loan book to the likes that we've never seen before, but it was mostly because of the getting the brand out there. It was also because we widened our common bond at the end of 2019. We're very active in social media and LinkedIn and all of these types of things. And we changed our lending policy, and we moved away from a multiplier of savings and based it more on affordability and creditworthiness. So all of these ingredients into the mix helped improve our lending out the door. We had never reached 3 million before, and we reached it at Christmas, to the point where I've not done this for years, but to the point where I was watching the liquidity of the credit union and going, are we going to have enough money in the bank to get through Christmas, which was a lovely problem to have. But then you go into January and the headlines are the cost of living crisis and all of these people. So now worrying about getting the money back in again. So, and that's where we're trying to be proactive around helping people make sure they're getting the benefits that they should be getting, and income maximisation being done on people, looking at increasing the thresholds on our lending policy, because we know that they might be able to afford it today, but they might not be able to afford it 6 months down the line when the energy prices go up yet again. So we're already factoring in these things just to try and mitigate the risk to the credit union. So there's lots of things, there's always lots of things for us to think about, and every credit union, the people that are in here will know, but every social enterprise, I imagine as well, are wearing 10 different hats. We have 5 employees, so you know, you'd have to be really good at juggling different roles at different times, and it is a challenge, but I've been in the credit union movement for 20 years, and I love what I do because I believe in what we do. I believe that we're making a difference and a change to people's lives, and that's what it's about.
Thanks, Karen. That's really, really good. And thanks for answering the question from John in the chat. It's just about, but we mentioned the decrease in borrowing for Christmas and holiday loans and the increase in risky debt consolidation, and that's a trend in West Lothian apparently. And the question was about, are some credit unions bucking that trend around that? Yeah, there's also a comment in the chat from Your Pay Your Way, who are a social enterprise offering financial education. So again, that might be a good connection to be made here. If I think it's Adele or Michael, I can't work it out actually. There's 2 names I think there. If you want to make connections with any of you guys, if that'd be okay, that'd be quite good maybe to pick up on that. Yeah, I just wanted to move to kind of, I suppose the broad topic of today is kind of building these connections between credit unions and the broader social enterprise movement. So we very much see credit unions as part of the social enterprise movement. They are part of the social enterprise census, which comes out every 2 years or so. Hopefully another one's going to be coming out quite soon. But it's how do we build those connections a bit more, and I guess also why, what kind of mutual benefit could we have? I mean, as we mentioned, credit unions and other social enterprises are very much embedded in the local communities. They're very much part of the local communities, but how do we really build those connections a bit stronger? And also, what connections do you have currently with not just social enterprises, but other kind of local community groups, that kind of thing? Anybody wants to pick up on that point in particular?
Duncan, I think it's related to what's the driver for doing anything together. I think the notion of collaboration conceptually makes sense, but as Karen's alluded to, particularly in credit unions and I imagine in social enterprises, there's often an abundance of ideas and a deficit of resource to achieve those ideas. And one of the things that we've been successful at in the past year is encouraging all of the lead credit unions to contribute to a collaboration fund. And every single lead credit union has donated or contributed a certain value of funds to achieve some common goals. And this was really born from the Scottish Government grants that were issued last year around helping credit unions become resilient. So we surveyed the credit unions to understand what are there common issues, are there common challenges, and how can we build connections even within credit unions to tackle those common challenges. And 3 common challenges emerged. Marketing / promotion of credit unions, as Karen alluded to, not on an individual site-by-site basis, but on a more broader conceptual basis of what credit unions can be. The second element was around compliance. It universally affects every credit union in exactly the same way, and only resource changes how well credit unions treat compliance. So we are building a compliance portal to help every credit union understand what the compliance requirements are and respond to those requirements. And then the third element was around payroll relations and recognising that credit unions who engage in payroll type activity attract a different cohort of members that sometimes have less acute credit needs, and that therefore provides stable lending opportunities and thus loan interest that allows credit unions to engage in the more riskier lending that they wouldn't necessarily be able to do if it wasn't being offset by the more stable lending. So I think, to your point, Duncan, it's about surveying the component parts of a sector, whether it's social enterprise or in our case credit unions, understanding where the areas of commonality are, and then presenting a proposition that says, this is what we want to do, this is what we want to achieve, and having that engagement being voluntary and being active participation, where the credit unions want to be involved, they want to collaborate together, and they move and they collaborate on the basis of a credit union led collaboration rather than an externally led collaboration. So therefore the collaboration moves at the pace determined by the credit unions. Does that give you a kind of insight into how we do things, Duncan, at our end?
Yeah. Karen or Jackie, do you have any particular thoughts on that kind of topic of, I suppose, building links with other social enterprises and also kind of mutual benefit, all this kind of stuff?
No, I mean, I think what Dermot said pretty much sums it up. Like, you're just, I mean, the environment has changed so much in the past few years. You're just always got to think about what's the next thing, and then I think a key ingredient is to keep in contact. For me, it's definitely about keeping in contact with the other agencies that are out there, other credit unions, to see best practice and share best practice. And for we work quite closely with our local authority as well, which is Renfrewshire Council at the moment, because we're based in Paisley, and they've always been very supportive of the credit union. And again, the third sector interface, which is engaged here in Renfrewshire, is great for keeping us up to date with what's happening, what other agencies are doing. So it's just about keeping connected to what's happening in your area and your community, which in itself could be a full-time job. I mean, it's a lot of activity, and trying to keep up to date with all the technology as well that people use, like TikTok. Like, I don't even know. I'm like, I'm still trying to get a grip of Facebook, but so yeah, I think it's just about always trying to keep connected and keep up to date with what's happening for us anyway.
Jackie, do you have any particular thoughts on that at all?
Yeah, I'm very much just what Karen's saying there. Certainly, you know, the 2 years that I've been here, we try to get regular catch-ups, and I've learned a lot from the other credit unions that, you know, in the Scottish League, that when we do our sort of we have these Zoom meetings, you know, and it gives us ideas on what we can do here as well. But it is always down to resource, because we do, you know, okay, we have 4 part-time paid members, but that 4 part-time paid members do a lot of voluntary hours as well, you know, just to keep things going. And it's really, for us, it's just trying to spread the word. A lot of people see us in the high street. I mean, we're right on the high street, we've painted our windows, they're vibrant, you know, it's just, but folks still don't really understand what we're about. So that's a main thing that we're kind of focusing on just now. I mean, you know, we're building slowly, our lending book's creeping up slowly, but not where it should be. And like all credit unions, if we're going to get the loans out, we'll not be able to keep the lights on. So, but always people coming at the door saying, right, can we save with you? You know, I mean, folk are throwing money at us, but can't really take it because we don't want that. We want you to borrow the money, you know. So it's kind of it's just been like that for us. So yeah, but I think working together definitely helps, and I think these sort of chats and that in these meetings, we always learn something new. I mean, I've wrote down loads of notes myself that I'll take away from today. And I know I can always pick up the phone to Dermot and Karen and the other people that I've met, you know, when I'm stuck with anything. So, and that's what it's all about.
And do you find, I suppose just locally speaking, do you find there's any particular forum or a policy agenda which is kind of, I suppose, a natural fit for you guys and maybe other social enterprises as well? I don't know, like we've talked a lot about community wealth building, this kind of community wealth building agenda around basically community-led regeneration, but it brings in all the different partners, local authority, you know, TSI, credit unions. Is there anything, any particular thoughts on that? Just kind of how the best way to build those local connections? Dermot?
Duncan, I think it's related to scale. And it's not that credit unions don't want to be actively engaged in community wealth building or community asset transfers or any of the constructive, wholesome activity. It's really related to having the scale to do what needs to be done of a day and other things. And I think, as Jackie just alluded to and Karen previously, credit unions operate on pretty tight margins of profitability, but also margins of resource as well. And it's only when credit unions achieve a certain scale, which ultimately translate to profitability, can they then distribute those profits in more imaginative ways, or use those profits to bring on board different skill sets to allow the credit unions to engage in more imaginative practices. So it's aspirational, but that aspiration directly linked to capacity and scale rather than lack of inclination. And that's why credit unions are, from external stakeholders, often look at credit unions. Can credit unions do this? Can credit unions do that? Can credit unions help these people? Can credit unions be involved here? The answer almost always is yes, they can, but it's when and who and how and why. And if credit unions are to be more of an anchor in community regeneration, then there's really only two routes that they can achieve that. One is through the individual firm having enough reserves and scale and surplus generation to do that. The only other alternative is to have external investment at a governmental, and not necessarily a local governmental, but a national governmental level that says, we recognise that credit unions can be a community anchor, but we recognise that they don't have the capacity individually, and therefore here is what the government can do to systemically position credit unions as being community anchors. So I just want to make that point, Duncan. It's not about inclination, it's about capacity.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that point about capacity and scale is really, really important, because that's the same for all social enterprises, I think, as well. I mean, we're involved in lots of policy discussions and community wealth building, all this kind of stuff, but for a lot of social enterprises, they're small organizations and they haven't got capacity to get engaged. But I think you're right, it's a good point to make, that it's about, we want to be involved in these things, but it's not necessarily possible. So Karen or Jackie, have you got any particular thoughts on that at all?
Well, definitely for us, it is more about, you know, physically being able to stretch ourselves to do the day-to-day work. You know, we manage that, but there's some days something will happen. Like yesterday, we had no internet, so that threw us, and it didn't come back on until 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So something gets thrown into the mix. You've got your day planned, and then it just goes out the window. And because there's so few of us, I mean, there's loads of things that we'd like to do, but we just, you know, there's not enough hours in the day, and two, not enough days in the week. And sometimes you want to go that way, but you think, well, better to go that way. And, you know, so it's just, we have to try and prioritize what would be best for everyone. But yeah, it's, you know, if we could get some, you know, help, because for us as well, as I say, you know, getting the wages paid for the 4 part-timers, we have to fundraise all the time. So that's a huge job. So, and unless you're really good at funding applications, which we manage, but I don't think we're on top of it all yet. But that's where we're going to work with FACT next door, the Forest Area Community Trust. They've got a person that's paid to do fund applications, so they're going to work closely with us because we work closely with them in different things. So, you know, hopefully that'll help us, you know, get some more money in so that we can stretch ourselves further.
I think there's some really good examples you guys will come up with about collaborations, to be honest, in terms of, you know, working with people locally. I think some really good examples there. Yeah, Karen, do you have any thoughts on any of those points?
Just reiterating what Dermot and Jackie had both said, you know, we have loads of ideas that we want to do and we want to achieve, and that's because we're passionate about what we do, and you know, we want to help people. There just isn't enough hours in the day, like Jackie said, for everything that we want to do. So I think the key for us is about collaboration working, and to make sure that we work together and support each other and share our resources as best we can. And we are fortunate to be part of the Scottish League, and that helps us facilitate to be able to do that. But I think we could be a bit better at it. I think we all could be a bit better, not just credit unions, but working with other partner organisations to say, you know, we have this, we could share that, to just try and make everybody's life a wee bit easier. I think one of the things that I found in our credit union over the past years, we are a community credit union, I should have said that at the beginning, and is that we started with volunteers, and we have a voluntary board of directors, but as we employed staff, we lost some of the volunteers, and I now think we need to spend some time reinvesting in our volunteers, and that's something that we are going to be looking to do over the next couple of months, and we've already started that with work placements through West College Scotland and things like that. So we're also helping to upskill people in the area, but we're getting the benefit of having someone volunteer some time with our credit union. So it's a win-win for everyone. But yeah, there's never enough hours in the day, never.
I don't think. So that's just coming up to 12:30 now. So I think that's a really comprehensive conversation we've had there, to be honest. Lots of points raised, lots of, you know, room for development in terms of the conversation, I would say. Do any of you have any final comments around any of that? I was kind of thinking in terms of maybe policy actions, for example. What could government and local government do more in terms of, you know, helping empower credit unions and build their capacity, that kind of thing? And also this question about marketing and profile raising as well. I think that's an issue we face in social enterprise all the time. And even now, we, you know, raised the profile of social enterprise over the past few years really well, but I think there's still, as we've all mentioned here today, there's a lot of, you know, scope there for really raising the profile. And there's maybe scope for us and working with the Scottish League as well, for example, around some of these issues. But so it's a very convoluted couple of questions there, but any kind of policy issues or marketing issues, those kind of things.
Duncan, I think one of the challenges for government, local and national, is the fact that credit unions are independent, autonomous organisations. So whilst all of them share the name, there's an assumption that they're somehow they're part of the same network, or part of the same thing. And that's why it's sometimes difficult to determine policy that fits all. I mean, even amongst the attendees today, well, I think we've got Scott West in attendance, I can see from the participant list, one of the largest credit unions in Scotland and also the UK. And conversely, we've got Jackie from Moray Firth, more compact in size. So it's sometimes very difficult to create a policy that fits the extremities of the sector. What I would say, though, is that the Scottish Government, we have recently reconstituted the cross-party group in credit unions, and that seems to have a vitality and an organisation and a purpose that may not have been prevalent pre-COVID. But so now the cross-party group is an opportunity for credit unions to come together and talk about common issues, common opportunities, and then push that up through the trustees of the cross-party group. So Scottish Government are supportive of credit unions, and we've always found them to be receptive to what we, the sector, want to do. And a bit like credit unions promote self-help to their members, it's a hand up, not a handout. I think the same thing now applies to credit unions as at a firm level. It's up to the individual firms to now say, this is what we need. This is what we need the local or national government to do around policy, but formulating those ideas before we go and start chapping doors, I think.
Yeah. Karen and Jackie, do you have any particular points on, sorry, no, I've merged lots of questions there, but basically any policy questions that government could do better, or indeed how we can help, you know, market and promote credit unions more?
I just around what John has said about debt solutions nationally, it would be great. I mean, I don't think it's going to happen, but it would be great if credit unions could be looked at, you know, protected trust deeds and things like that definitely are an issue for us. And how I understand that people have to have solutions to debt crisis and debt management. Absolutely, there is a need for it, but how easy it is for people to go into them. And just that kind of thing, because that is a killer, and we do see people racking up debts and then knowing that they can just write it off like that. And also, I don't feel that people are educated enough on the impact that going into these kind of agreements have either, because they think they can just write it off, but they don't see the long-term impact that it has. And then we see a lot of people coming back to us and saying, oh, but I was in that trust deed and I want to start borrowing with you again. And we're like, well, you know, sorry, that can't happen. So I think something around that, some kind of support for credit unions, and that might be, it might be educational wise, it might be working with AIB or something like that, and not always about changing what's already set, because we know that can be challenging. I think definitely the marketing thing, I know the Scottish Government have tried to help in the past, but I think, you know, listen to more to what we need. And I think about raising the brand of credit unions as a whole and the benefits, but we're not the solution to everything. We can't fix everybody's problem. If someone is in debt crisis, then a credit union can't help them. So there's no point in sending them here, but it's about getting people into good habits before they get to debt crisis. And that's where we can support people. So I think just, you know, again, like what you'd said around marketing, some kind of support, because like we've all said, that there's not enough hours in the day. We're constantly trying to juggle the finances, and where should we spend our money? Should it be on employees and bringing staff in? Should it be on marketing? And over the past few while, it's about been investing in digital and provisioning for bad debt. So just all of those type of things. Could be here all day asking all the things that we want, so I'll wrap it up at that.
We'll have further webinars, don't worry. It's the beginning of the conversation. Jackie, do you have any final thoughts at all on that? Or
I think Karen's just said everything that I wanted to say, so that's great.
That's fine,
So, yeah, just exactly what Karen said. It just, you know, I would just said exactly the same. The trust deed thing's a big thing for us as well. And I just, you know, I was a former bank manager, and when people used to come and said, oh, my debt's all written off, you know, so they're clearly not getting educated to what they're going into. They're signing on the dotted line. They're thinking, yay, that's me, I'm good. Whereas I think to me, it's morally wrong what's going on, because the trustees actually charge, you know, the people that are in debt, so they're even in even more debt, you know. So anyway, I think that's a big thing.
Excellent. Well, as I say, there's a lot to think about there. It's a really good conversation, to be honest. I found that really interesting, and it's just, but there's obviously a huge amount to digest, I think, for a lot of us. So yeah, definitely see this as the start of the conversation. Let's keep these connections up, I think, between, you know, our social enterprises and credit unions. I think it's really important to do that. And we can obviously remain in touch with Dermot and the Scottish League, and we can maybe think of ways we can work together. But thanks to our three speakers today. It's been really, really good. And thanks to our attendees and your questions as well. If anybody here, any attendees have got any further questions, just contact me and I can either answer it myself or pass on to our speakers. But thank you very much and have a good day, everybody.